History Spotlight, brought to you by HEC Media and the Missouri Historical Society.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jody Sowell from the Missouri Historical Society, and this is History Spotlight. In the 1910s and 1920s, board track racing was a popular sport. In August 1912, the St. Louis track was built at the intersection of Grand and Merrimack in South City. Public historian Andrew Kloppe explains why the opening nearly caused a riot.
So in the early 20th century, there was this really popular sport in America that really isn't around today. It was called board track racing. And what it was a form of motorcycle racing where competitors would race their motorcycles around in structures that were called Motordromes, which if you've ever seen the Olympics, and with the bicycle racing, they're in structures called velodromes, these wooden board tracks that are shaped like bowls, and the racers are running around the sides. Motordromes operate the exact same way, but with motorcycle racing. And so cities around the country built motordromes to bring in spectators for these sports. And the cities would compete with each other to say, oh, our track is the fastest, our track is whatever. And St. Louis built their own motordrome track in 1912. And they claimed at the time that it was the steepest motordrome in the nation. The walls were angled at 62.5 degrees. And riders had to maintain a speed of at least 40 miles an hour to be able to go around the track successfully. So St. Louis advertised their track also as the fastest one in the country, the one where riders would have to go the fastest. It really only lasted, 10 or 20 years. It wasn't a long-lived sport, and partially because it was so dangerous for the riders. And in fact, when the Motordrome in St. Louis opened in 1912, the very first race they ran there was an accident, and one of the riders was killed. A local man named Cleve Stillwell was killed in a motorcycle accident. And it created like a sense of pandemonium within the track. A lot of the seats were either on the infield or on the upper part of the track, like above where the motorcycle racers were going. So people had a really close-up view to this really gnarly accident. And people started to panic to the point that they had trouble getting emergency workers in. There was also a crush of people trying to leave the stadium, and they couldn't get out. So the track was closed briefly after this opening to install more safety features, including netting over the top of the track so pieces of the bike wouldn't fly into the stands when there was a wreck. But there was a lot of dangers. Just a week or so after the St. Louis track opened, there was an accident at a Motordrome in New Jersey where 6 people were killed. So really, in order to tamp down some of the dangers of board track racing, they started to slow down the bikes. They started to hold time trials instead of competitive races and things like that. And that meant crowds were smaller and smaller because the excitement of the racing just wasn't there. So the sport didn't last very long, and there wasn't a whole lot to do with these stadiums once board track racing was gone. We have photos of balloon launches and stuff at the St. Louis Motordrome, but that's not going to happen that often. It's few and far between. It's not that many spectators. So really, the sport starts to die out, and the track here in St. Louis was torn down in the mid-1920s.
Next week on History Spotlight, the original plans for the arch, and why we should be even more thankful for what stands on the riverfront today.
To learn more about the Missouri Historical Society, visit mohistory.org.